Hey, everybody, welcome to our very first CGSP Roundtable. This is a new beginning for us because it's really the first time we're actually putting our faces on camera. Normally, we do things behind the camera. We write emails, we do podcasts, but today you've got the gang with you. It's part of a new series that we're launching, which is going to be the CGSP Roundtable, where every week we're going to get different members of the China Global South Project team to come together to talk about some of the important issues and really to reach out to the YouTube community and on Twitter as well for these kinds of discussions that we're having all the time. So let me just get started by introducing who we've got here with us today. So happy that joining us from Mauritius is our good friend Jérôme Nima, our Africa editor. Bonjour, Jérôme.
Bonjour, Eric. Good afternoon, good evening to you all, guys. It's been really long time coming for us. We've been working on this project to have our first China Global South Roundtable discussion with the whole team. Some of you have been already been used to me to see me on YouTube on different videos I've made on China Africa, and now you have the China Global South team coming to you every week with different people coming from different parts of the world, where we are going to have the discussion I used to have with you on China Africa. Now we're gonna have it on China in a global South issue. So I'm really happy to be here. It's our first time. You might see some mistakes here and there, but be
Yep.
patient. It's our very first show.
Please
We're
be
gonna
patient.
really get better with that. But yes, we're really just happy to be here to bring you that conversation from the global South with different perspective on different issues. And Eric, thank you for making this happen, and thank you for the whole team behind the camera that are really helping us to make this real today.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun as it's a little scary for us again. So as Joe said, we're hoping that you guys are going to be nice in the comments and not too mean. That's what makes us a little bit nervous. But also, before we get going, we want to make sure we introduce Njenga Akina, who's joining us from Nairobi, and our Africa climate editor. Good afternoon to you, Njenga, and welcome to the very first CGSP Roundtable.
Oh, thank you, Eric. And how are you, Jiho?
Doing
Good
fine,
to
thank
see
you.
you and everyone watching us. We are grateful to be here for this China Africa talk and in the global South as well. Like Eric and Jiho have said, it's a new thing for us, and so we will just we won't fumble around. We have it figured out. But for the few nascent mistakes that may happen, just forgive us and let us go. And
Yeah.
like Eric says, don't be mean, just be kind, and
You can see
and
we're
give us your
nervous
feedback.
here. We're
help
nervous.
us help us
I'm
to
scared. I
improve,
know.
That's
because
right.
the main point
Yes.
is the discussion, the technical part. If you have a software that you can suggest us, don't hesitate, tell us.
Mhm.
You can use this program, it's much better. But all we
Yes.
want us is to have this conversation with you, so we can get that conversation about the China and the global South moving forward.
Yeah, so
Yes.
let's get
And
started and
from
we'll get
yeah.
right into it. And we're going to talk a lot about today the Belt and Road Forum that just wrapped up out here in Asia, just a little bit north of me up in China. So this is the third Belt and Road Forum. It was a really, really big deal. I mean, there's no way to kind of get around it to say that it wasn't a big deal. And these are the bigwigs that are kind of making their way in today for the final day of it. And so by the time a lot of you guys are watching this, it's already been wrapped up. The main headline: $100 billion of new funding that the Chinese are going to put forward into the Belt and Road through the China Development Bank. That's a big number. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of us did not expect that number. Giraud, what was your take on this?
I was not really expecting that number to be so high, especially when you see how China has been now, have been retrieving, have been going back a bit, back scaling its financing toward global South, especially in Africa. When I say global South, I only mean Africa, because when we see the financing that China has been sending in Latin America, you see they're still sending money there. But in Africa, we saw some China getting back a bit in terms of financing. So when I see hundreds of billions of dollars, like, yes, that's a good amount of money, especially when you take into account that between 2013 up to 2021, it was $331 billion that China has put in the BRI. Now you have 100 billion put as commitment into for the project. We're gonna see how it's going to unfold, and we're going to see especially who's going to get the money. That's the big question: which continent and which country, and especially which project are going to get the much more money, since now China is into the small and beautiful $100 billion. It's a lot of money, but it's also not that much of money.
Yeah. So
And
the
I
highlight
believe,
today. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead, Njenga.
yes, like Jiho is saying, I think once we break down this amount of money to the very specific projects, then this will advise us as to where China is looking to put their money. Because at the end of the day, 100 billion is a lot of money. But until we have said it's 1 billion for roads, it's 1 billion for this or that, then we cannot really tell where China is going with the beautiful small projects that they are looking to. And also for Africa, how can it strategize to work with this money that is being given by China?
Okay, so we got to talk about this small is beautiful. Giraud has already mentioned it, and Jenga's already mentioned it. This is the new priorities for the Belt and Road financing. They're getting away from the big financing of multi-billion-dollar projects like the Standard Gauge Railway in Kenya or the Hambantota Port in Sri Lanka or the high-speed railway in Laos. That was Belt and Road 1.0. Belt and Road 2.0, which is emerging now, is all about these small projects which are under 50 million, focusing on green, focusing on telecommunications, connectivity, and things like that. What you're seeing here in the video is the family photo of the on the last day between Xi and the visiting heads of state. Interesting that, and we're going to show this to you later, uh, not a lot of heads of state that were there this time. And that was something very interesting. So the popularity of the Belt and Road and the attendance at the forum was quite substantial. So a robust turnout, but not among heads of state. And we'll show you what that means. But let's kind of turn our attention now a little bit to William Ruto. So that is your president, Njenga. And he kind of came with a very big ambition. Tell us what he had on the agenda when he wanted to, what he was coming to China for. What did he want to get out of the visit?
So Ruto was looking for $1 billion, which is a very interesting time to be asking for money.
Speaking of the small is beautiful, right?
And then this guy has not been to China or has not seen Xi Jinping since he became president. And yet he's going there to ask for this money. So this is the first time that they are meeting, and he's coming asking for money. But that's a story for another day because, again, geopolitics and stuff like that. But the president is under pressure to deliver on projects that are stalling or have stalled. He came to power on promises of making sure that the economy stabilized, that the projects that would help empower Kenyans, like dams, roads, opening up the country and stuff like that, would be done. In Mount Kenya region, where I come from, and which is in the center of the country, and where he got most votes from, there has been disquiet that the president has forgotten about us and our projects are being denied funding and stuff like that. And so heading into 2027, which is not too far off, if he is unable to meet or to fulfill these promises, then that's a huge electoral block that he would lose potentially. Because even as we are speaking now, there are several meetings that are happening in different places from these regions, and they are complaining about we are not getting the support that we are expecting.
Okay, so
President.
let's get into that details there, because you had a chance actually, and you wrote an excellent story for our subscribers on the site where you actually went out to some of these construction projects here, and you can see them. You had a chance to go check it out, and so tell us about what you saw when you went out to these sites and you saw these half-finished projects.
So the dam that you're displaying now is the Thwake Dam in eastern Kenya. It's about 100 kilometers from Nairobi, and it is 70% done, but not done in terms of filling, but in terms of excavations. And unfortunately, works have but they have slowed down. They just have a skeleton workforce because funding has been, held by government, from what I gathered in this visit. And so, unlike what has been before he came to power, they used to work together with the former president, and they would work together and convince people that this is what is happening. But now it seems like Ruto is bearing the burden of making sure that everybody is happy, regardless of whether there is money or not. And he has made huge promises, so he has to deliver. And China should come through for him with the funding, because he has to do this or else.
What do you mean? You said China should come through with the funding?
Yes.
Why? Why should China come through with the funding?
I believe that is his prayer, that
Okay,
China
that's a
should come
prayer,
through.
but that
hoping,
China
though.
is not obligated to come through. He's praying that they
Exactly.
come through. But so
Exactly.
he's asking for $1 billion. He wants to fix those roads. Those are some of the
Yeah.
projects that you've seen. And a lot of people are blaming the Chinese for these projects that have stalled. And what you found out when you went there is actually it's
Yeah.
not the Chinese, it's the fact
They're
that they're
not.
Chinese contractors who've had to lay off people because they
Yep.
haven't gotten paid by the Kenyan government.
Yes. And so the interesting bit about we in Kenya, I wouldn't say we in Africa, it's we in Kenya, because I have interacted with a number of my people from the different areas, is that if I see Eric in a project, that is an American project. And so this is the case with the Chinese. So if there is a Chinese face, then everybody thinks that this is a Chinese project, it's funded by the Chinese, and so everything like that. Until you get to the details and you get to understand that there is much more. And the contractors are just, like the last kind of consideration when it comes to doing this project. And so in Kenya, this understanding has not yet sunk, that I may see Eric and it doesn't make it an American project. So I see Chinese, it doesn't make it a Chinese project. And so the funding really is not from China. It is from AFDB for this specific project. It's from the AFDB.
That's the African Development Bank,
Government
right?
bank, yeah.
Yes.
AFDB is African Development Bank, right?
Yes, but the government is taking time to disburse these funds, which is delaying. Actually, the people, some of the people that I got to interact with from the China side of, the project, is that they're frustrated that instead of getting this done in good time, they have to, take a longer time to 2024, because that is when the president has promised to get it done. And so they have to stay longer on a project instead of just getting done and, moving on to the next.
Okay, so that's what he's asking $1 billion for. This is a really big ask
well.
to say, to build, roads. Then he came up with a little bit of a surprise, and I want to play a little bit of sound for you guys. This was something that came up yesterday at the Kenya-China Investment Forum. And Jero, I'm going to want to get your take on this. Let's take a listen.
The reason why we are discussing with China on extending the standard gauge railway beyond Naivasha into Uganda, into DRC Congo, all the way to Congo Brazzaville, is because we want to connect the eastern coast of Africa to the western coast of Africa using the SGR. We've had conversations with the president of Uganda, with the president of DRC, with the president of Congo Brazzaville, and we've all agreed on the need to extend this piece of infrastructure as a means of facilitating trade across our continent and making sure that companies like yourselves who set up in Kenya not only have access to the Kenyan market, but have also access to the East African market and the continental market, because we have made the decision that that is the way to go. As we look at the 1.4 billion people in China, we are equally looking at 1.4 billion people in Africa, and we want to connect.
Okay, there you have it. He wants Chinese investors to come up and he wants China to come up and pay for some of the extension. Now, let's be very clear here. He's not asking for the Chinese government or the Chinese policy banks to do this. He's asking for Chinese investors to do it, and he wants to model it on the public-private partnership model that he did with the Nairobi Expressway, the 27-kilometer Nairobi Expressway, which is a partnership between the Kenyan government and the China Road and Bridge Corporation. So, Jero, when you hear him say this, what do you think Chinese investors are thinking when they say, we want you to fund the phase 3 of the SGR? Mind you, this is the same phase 3 of the SGR that for at least 5 years, Chinese policy banks have said they won't fund. In as late as 2019, not William Ruto, but his boss then, Uhuru Kenyatta, the president of Kenya, went to Beijing, asked for more funding, and the Chinese said no.
Yeah.
What do you think the prospects are for a railway like this?
I think that William Ruto is missing the point, because he's not really looking around what's happening in the region. If he was paying close attention to what's happened in Uganda, in Tanzania, who had the same problem with him actually right now. Uganda can now has been looking for funding to extend his railway from Kampala to the border with Tanzania, with Kenya to connect to the SGR. Tanzania has been trying to do the same. So they've been, all of those three countries have been stuck with the lack of funding from China, because China, in all those three countries, China has funded a part of the railway, but China never went through all the way to finance everything, because at that time China realized that those countries, they're gonna have a huge problem of reimbursing the money they're getting from him. So it's gonna be really difficult for those countries to reimburse. So if William Ruto was paying close attention to what's happening in the region, he would understand that it won't be easy to convince China to put you that much money to extend to extend the SGR past Naivasha close to the Uganda border. It's going to be really tough for him. That's why even country like now Uganda is looking for Turkish financing, and they're looking for different financing. Same with Tanzania, looking for different finance, because they came to peace at some point to realize that we won't get the hundreds of millions of close to the $1 billion that required to build that railway. So we're gonna find our own solution. And this is my problem somehow with all those three countries, because you do realize that when they put in place those railway program, they did not coordinate between the three of them. Because when Ruto is speaking, you clearly see that he has a vision of like a regional vision to connect east to west, different countries. But when they were planning those railway, when they were discussing, when they were negotiating, each of three countries went separately to China with his own situation. I want money for this, I want money for that, hoping that at some point that China will put money together and they're gonna connect all of them. But if they had gone like together as a region, as a group, to say, this is our regional program and vision, they would have found a way to find a good financing strategy with China and a better way to work with that. But so far they haven't done that. So now they find themselves stuck with parts of railways where nothing's getting done, and they're just hoping that China's going to add much more money into the basket, hoping that they're going to do that. But this is, for me, it's a very problematic for Africa in terms of the way they approach China with those infrastructure projects.
But it also runs counter to a lot of the other trends that we're seeing in Southern Africa. So in our latest podcast, you and I talked about new supply chain routes going from the DRC, Zambia, out to Dar es Salaam, and also through Mozambique to the Atlantic coast. The United States is behind a program to get the Lobito corridor in Angola going. So there's a lot of movement now on the connectivity in Africa for rail and road. And it seems like he's trying to take advantage of that. One of the selling points that he said was that he had all of the presidents from Congo, Brazzaville, Uganda, the DRC, and Kenya on board, and they were aligned. That's really important, because this regional cooperation is not something we've seen a lot in the past. So if they can get something going in terms of financing, it could be quite useful. And Njenga, tell us a little bit about the problem that the SGR is having right now in terms of ending in Naivasha. For those people who are not familiar with Naivasha, it's in the Rift Valley. Where is Naivasha, and why is this a problem? Why does Ruto want to make sure it goes from Naivasha to Maleba and to the Ugandan border?
All right. So Naivasha is about 200 kilometers from Nairobi, and probably 600 or so from Mombasa, where the SGR originates. And so if it gets to Naivasha, then there is a huge population from Naivasha all the way to Malaba that is not served by the SGR. And what happens with this is that a lot of transportation has to be done on the road, which is a cost because of maintenance and all those things. Again, efficiency and reliability of logistics. So with the railway line, the SGR coming to Naivasha and stopping, it was actually an issue of it's a railway to nowhere, because where it is terminating in Naivasha, it's not as populated as you would expect in serving the western region of the country. Again, there has been a lot of activism around the project. And so beyond just being or terminating in Naivasha, there is the issue of funding from way back the project was highly inflated, the costs. And so people have been asking questions. And so why should we continue with this project from Naivasha to wherever, and again, at an inflated cost? But beyond that, and beside that as a point, what you see with the SGR is that most people will be looking to see, could it make transportation to Kisumu, which is the border town, in the western region of Kenya, and, to Uganda and Tanzania, would it make it easier for people transporting or traveling from Mombasa to basically like from the east coast to the west coast of Kenya because of the Lake Victoria? And again, looking at the demands that are there, there is a lot of logistics in terms of that are needed in terms of transporting things like fish, transporting fresh produce from the western region of Kenya to the coast, Mombasa, and also, infrastructure and all these things. And so there is a lot. There are many factors that contribute to the SGR being a problem project, and also being something that could work if it was done well,
properly.
And so, and again, because I am very new in the China-Kenya relations in this, I would say that for
you don't sound like
Chinese...
it. You don't sound like it. You sound like a pro.
But I think for the Chinese, probably being cautious about funding this is because of all the noise that has been made. And then, the debt trap diplomacy
narrative,
kind of thing. So I think they would want to let probably this cool down a bit for a number of years before we think about extending it from Naivasha, financing it from Naivasha.
But
I do believe it's much more of how much this project is going to be profitable in the long term. Because as you say, in the west region of Kenya, as long as there's no really strong economic activities, because I remember there was a debate in Uganda where even among experts who were saying that those railway only make sense, they're only profitable to those countries if and only if they connect to each other. As long as they don't connect to each other, it just doesn't make sense. It's not profitable. So I think from the Chinese investors, like, it's looking at those projects and wondering, okay, how is going to be profitable if we do connect those with the, with the Uganda, with Tanzania? This is one problem. The other problem is that it's become, okay, we can go in public-private partnership, but the question is, are those countries, are they really strong enough to reimburse us? Because it's coming with a very risky environment, and you kind of wonder if those countries are going to be able to reimburse. When you see Kenya asking for more time to reimburse his money, and Uganda complaining that they don't have money, and all the noise about the debt, right, diplomacy, Entebbe airport, everything. Of course, when you're a Chinese investor, you're like, I'm gonna stay away from those kind of noise for the moment. But at the same time, it's not finance, it's not profitable.
Yeah, but forget about being a Chinese investor. But when you think about the fact that railways around the world, from Germany to the United Kingdom to China, are all subsidized. The United States, billions of dollars every year go in to subsidize the railways. So these are not really profitable businesses. They are very important to sustaining other economic activity. That's why governments subsidize them. But if I was an investor and I would look around at the global railway market in countries that have much more robust industrial sectors that ship a lot more goods, and you think to yourself, if they can't sustain themselves, then how is it going to be in markets in Africa, which again have a lot of commodities that want to go from the mines to the ports? That's one way to make money out of it. But there's, as we're seeing, more ways now to get things from the mines to the ports. Moving people around Africa is tough unless you're in a country like Nigeria that has very, very dense populations between, say, Lagos and Abuja, for example. So you need a high density of population. That's why the Japanese railroads are among the only profitable in the world. Hong Kong's subway as well is very profitable, but very, very few others are profitable. So I think this is a tough sell. I think a really really tough sell.
It's really a really tough sell. It's gonna the landscape is going to the situation is going to change if the economic landscape of those countries changes. If in the west of Kenya now you have industry, you have like things really a burgeoning economy. Now it's you have that story. You have now that situation of the egg or or the chicken.
The
like
chicken.
what comes first? The railway comes first and brings the economy, or the economy comes first and the railway I'm gonna follow up because I know I can be profitable. So you have that kind of situation. So this is why I would at the beginning I was saying that those three countries, they did not work together into planning those railways to really find a very solid plan to find financing and to make sure it's going to finish. But since we know that many of those head of state and many bureaucrats in those countries, they wanted the money come, the easy money that was coming from China. They wanted to inflate their cost. They wanted to take each cut and everything. They knew from the beginning they could not work together because it was impossible for all those bureaucrats to find the way to inflate the cost so they can all eat together. So each of them went to China, but at the end, all of them lost. And this is really sad.
Okay, so let's kind of talk a little bit more about Ruto and then we'll move on. But Ruto, it wasn't all a bust for him. He signed $68 billion, 68 billion shillings. It would be great for him to sign $68 billion.
I was like,
68 billion shillings in deals. That's about $422 million in deals during the Kenya-China Investment Forum. That's real money. I mean, that is $500 million of deals. If he comes back with that in his pocket, now, not all of those deals will come through at the end of the day, but a lot of them will. And so that actually made the trip worthwhile. And again, I guess the point for me about the whole Belt and Road Forum is, where else in the world right now? And I'm not saying this to kiss up to China. The Chinese can take care of themselves in terms of defending it. But, for all the talk you hear from the Americans and from the Europeans, and we hear quite a bit, they don't have stuff like this. They don't have these huge businesses. The U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit was just all, like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And remember the $55 billion of new money that they were going to promise?
Yeah.
What happened to that? Nothing came out of it. I believe the $422 million in deals that Ruto oversaw in Beijing is worth more than the $55 billion of U.S. money, because that $55 billion in U.S. money is simply recycled money that's already being spent. It's not new money.
Yeah.
So very quickly, and Njenga, I'll give you the last word on this. So he went over with a couple of objectives. Number one is he wanted to get these deals signed on the MOUs. And so those are in the pharmaceutical, the ICT, and the agriculture sector mostly. So some really cool deals there. He wanted to get this $1 billion of loans for roadworks. He's
dams and things like that.
And we know for a fact from insiders inside the Kenyan Foreign Ministry that he's not listening to good advice on that one. Let me just kind of put it there.
Sadly.
The last one is that he wants to try and get the Chinese to renegotiate their debt, to basically restructure the debt. So they owe, we think, around $6 billion. And let's be super clear here, okay? $6 billion is about 7 to 8% of Kenya's total $75 billion.
That's important. That's important. Yes.
It's a very important point because I'm going to play you a soundbite from an American diplomat, and I want you guys to remember this. So, but they're having a lot of problems right now because this debt is paid in dollars. The currency, the shilling, hit a new record low this week. And so it's costing them a lot of money to service this debt. And all they want the Chinese to do is to elongate it. For some reason, the Chinese have been hard asses with the Kenyans more than anybody else. So they got a 6-month debt deferral in 2021. The central bank went to the Chinese, to the China Exim Bank, and said, hey, that first 6 months was great. Can we get another 6 months? And they said, nope. All right, you got to pay. And that is the way it is when you deal with the Chinese. And we heard this from Edwin Lee, who was this project attorney in Beijing. And he said, if you want to borrow money from the Chinese, you had better be ready to pay. It is just the bottom line. In Njenga, I don't get a sense that a lot of people fully understand that. I'm not entirely sure if China Exim will give the Kenyans an extension on the debt or restructure the debt. They have not been accommodating up until now, but it is a really big problem.
I believe that if And this is why I was saying it's a prayer. If this works, Ruto will have gained milestones and milestones of advantage
If it
politically.
does, that's right.
If it does. So it's a huge bet that he made, and I am not sure it's going to be fruitful. However, all this money that has been or is owed to Chinese lenders has to be paid at some point, and the deferrals may not work. On Friday, it's a public holiday, and so then we will get to know what he really got from China. If he got the deferral, he will speak it, from the highest mountains and say, "Hey guys, we are good." Because being a public holiday, everybody is on TV glued and listening to the president and what they have to say. Of course, the deals that have been signed, the commitments that have been made in terms of that we will invest or we could invest this much in Kenya, that is being pushed. If you've been to the president's website, even on Twitter, you will see that it's big. They're amplifying that. Or the president met this and that person, and this is what came out of it. We are going to, improve IT and stuff like that. We are going to make it an IT economy and stuff like that. So yes, we will get to know on Friday, because there are some news that
I don't know, because you remember, Giraud, when your president went to China.
Oh yeah.
And he went over there, and they were like, big deal. They brought all this huge entourage of people, and then I got into a little bit of trouble because I wrote like it was a waste of time for him to go. And then they literally, when they came back, they had to have a press conference that said, we didn't go to China with the expectation that we were going to get anything. And you're just like, well, why the F would you go to China if you don't think you're going to get anything? But so it's not a guarantee, as you know, Giraud, that they get anything out of these trips.
It's not really a guarantee at all. It's not given it at all. For me, I'm more wondering though, why China is playing hardball with Kenya on this deferral.
I don't get it.
They gave Ethiopia, I think. They gave Ethiopia last week.
They're in the process with Ethiopia. They're restructuring. And they wrote off some grants for Ethiopia, but Ethiopia is working in the common framework. They restructured Angola's debt.
Exactly.
They've restructured a lot of people's debt, but they are playing hardball with Kenya for some reason.
I don't know why they're playing hardball.
I think Kenyans play too much. They never get serious,
It even reminds me.
I don't know.
So the Chinese don't think if they're serious or don't know if they're serious. It reminds me
when you say that if Chinese are they don't think Kenyans are serious. It reminds me, Eric, that story about China hacking into Kenya public administration, and they were hacking into the financing ministry to check on Kenya's finance debt situation and all.
Debt situation.
If it was true, I don't.
We don't know if it was true, but it would make sense that it would be true that they hacked in there.
It would tell you how much China kind of is worried about Kenya's ability to reimburse its money. So you're kind of wondering why Kenya? Why playing hardball with Kenya though?
I don't get it, because
they have a ports, they have access. I mean, they have really an access point. They can be a really strategic country in terms of like access from the east to west and everything. But the way they're playing hardball with Kenya, I don't understand.
So this is one of the points that I like to make, is that when people start bringing up the debt trap, and I say, listen, you're barking up the wrong tree here. We don't have examples of the debt trap. And so what I always then point out is that there are problems with Chinese loans. And Kenya, for me, is one of the problems, is that there's nothing stopping the Chinese from saying, you know what? Let's extend the loan by 10, 15 years. Let's lower the interest rate a little bit. We'll make it easy for you. But they don't do it. And so that's why I say every minute that's wasted on talking about the debt trap is a minute not spent on talking about legitimate concerns like this debt repayment in Kenya. So I want to play you a little bit of sound, because this is how the Americans kind of frame these things. And I just want to bring, this is Nick Burns, who's the U.S. ambassador to China. He talked about the Belt and Road Summit, and I want to get your reactions on what he said, because he did raise the issue of debt.
Look, our view is that China has a right to put forward a program that it believes is in its interest. We think that program obviously has produced in some of its recipient countries a high degree of debt. And so we're not out campaigning against the Belt and Road Initiative. It's China's decision to go forward with it in its next phase. But countries have to beware of becoming unusually dependent on Chinese aid and on mounting debt. And we've seen examples of that in Sri Lanka and Zambia and elsewhere.
Okay, so there you have it. That is a typical line that you have coming from the Americans. First of all, let's call BS. I need an air horn that kind of every time that, to say that the Americans are not out campaigning against the Belt and Road is just the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, because we joke around that we have a drinking game on the podcast now of every acronym of a U.S. government program that's designed to literally counter the Belt and Road, whether it's B3W, PGII, Blue Dot Network. Now it's IMEC, the India Middle East Economic Corridor. So that's disingenuous. The second point that he brought up was the fact that he's raising this issue of Zambia and Sri Lanka as debt. And Giraud and Njenga, you'll remember, and again, I am not saying this to defend the Chinese, okay? I am saying this in the name of accuracy. And the fact is that Zambia did not default on its Chinese debt. Zambia defaulted on its Eurobond debt. Yeah. And it is same in Sri Lanka, that it was the Eurobond and was the private creditors that were causing it the problem. You have never heard Hakainde Hichilema or any of these leaders complain about the Chinese debt. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with the U.S. narrative here, is that it's fair to criticize the Chinese. They should criticize the Chinese, but they got to get their facts straight. And when they go down these paths of poorly informed critiques, it just gives the Chinese a way out to say, these jokers don't know what they're talking about. Njenga, let's get your take on it.
That's true. Let me say, in terms of debt, when Kenya turned east about 20 years ago with President Kibaki, that is when things started to change. I will share about one of the major roads that was done by the Chinese. It was debt. But it opened up Nairobi in terms of, growth and movement of people and everything else. Before then, the estimates that were being given by the Treasury were that we were wasting 1 billion Kenya shillings. That's about $10 million US daily due to traffic. And this was not just burning fuel, but in terms of lost work hours and man hours and all those things. And so, while there is this, debt trap diplomacy and things like that, this talk that is coming from the US and Europe sometimes, we can see what the Chinese have done. Eric, like you're saying, let's not be, the devil's advocate for the Chinese here, but it is what it is. It is what we can see. The Americans, there is this, kind of talk where people say, Americans will come and lecture you and leave you at that. The Chinese will come and they will leave, something that you can see, something that you can touch. And so if we were to look at these issues like that.
Which that's a BS line too, by the way.
Exactly.
It's a complete, let's not go down that line either, because that we can get into that. But a lot of people like to say that the Chinese themselves, but the Americans do an enormous amount of good in Africa. And there's just no way to actually, deny that.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is, we have to balance, we have to actually speak the facts as they are. So if it is debt, what did it go to? If it is, aid, where did it go to? And what came out of all this? Because at the end of the day, if we keep muddling and meddling everyone's affairs and, trying to make them look bad just because, then it defeats the purpose for what can we do? Plug in, get the gaps and show us what can be done better. They are doing this, but, you're not offering options.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna be Nick Burns, a bit devil advocate here. I mean, in a certain extent, when you used to have the debt trap narrative, diplomacy coming, out of Washington or even London and elsewhere in Europe, you have to admit that in his, in his stance right now, it was a bit kind of nuanced in a certain way. I was glad that he did not talk about debt trap diplomacy as he used to.
And he didn't talk about imported labor. That's usually another big one.
Exactly. So and in his wording was like certain country, because before it was like all country where the Chinese, they have a China debt issue. Now it was like certain country. That tells you somehow they kind of learn, they're kind of like being receptive to the idea that, we know now that our narrative is not really what we used to say it was going to be. And second of all, it pinpoints some country where, they have a kind of substantial amount of China debt. In the case of Zambia, it's kind of 6 billion out of 18 billion. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's kind of, he handpicked, some country where he can put that. But yes, in overall, they became more like, I would say it was more balanced than Yellen was few
to be
few months
fair,
back.
Nick Burns is one of the most experienced diplomats in the entire State Department. This is a super smart guy. He's been around for a very long time. He's actually a very competent ambassador to China. I would just contend that, again, he would benefit enormously from getting our newsletter every day.
Yes, that's true.
and so I just, nothing, it's just a little bit of a sell. So
Exactly. Yeah.
okay. Listen, I promised that I was going to show you before we move on very quickly, just to wrap up our. I just want to wrap up our discussion on the Belt and Road. This is something pretty interesting that came up. This is the 3 Belt and Road forums that have happened in the past three times. So starting back in 2017, 2019, and then here we have the bottom one in just that wrapped up today. So very interesting just to see how crowded that 2017 one was. You also had some white faces in the crowd. The Europeans were there. It was a lot more diverse. There were no spouses in the crowd either, it looks like. And then by the time you get down to the bottom, the world has changed a lot. The world has changed a lot. This is a pretty profound picture. There's a lot of meaning in this picture. The number of leaders and heads of state that participated in the Belt and Road Forum. Not to say that it's not still a very effective thing and very important, but this really tells a story about how the world's changed. What do you think, Joe?
Yes, I think it's a lot of narrative went through there. A lot of debt trap narrative went through there. A lot of lack of financing went through there as well. If many head of state had the feeling that, I'm not going to get $1 billion out of this trip, many have just decided to skip the trip.
Well,
At that point, many things has happened, and also the world has changed. The geopolitics of the world changed a lot from 2017 to now. I think many countries now, they're kind of like, if I go to the Belt and Road Forum, I might be portrayed as anti-West, anti-China, and everything.
Part of it too, I think.
So
the world
let
has
me
changed
just
up a little bit.
let me send my foreign affairs ministry. Let me send my head of the prime minister. But myself, I will not go there. I won't show myself there. But I will send. Nonetheless, I will send a kind of quote unquote strong delegation without me as a head of state being present there. I do believe that there's a lot of politics behind where people want to stay in the middle and say, I was not there, but I was kind of present in a certain
Not
way.
a lot of African faces though in that picture at the bottom there.
Now, but Sassou Nguesso was there. I see Sassou Nguesso was there.
Nigeria not there. A number of big players didn't go. The Nigerians sent the vice president to it. So okay, now let's wrap up very quickly with I want to just talk about something that I thought was a little funny. Okay, here we go. This is William Ruto's plane. Now, give the guy props, okay, because he came on a commercial airliner. He didn't come on the chartered jet. And that deserves a lot of attention in my view. That's kind of cool. So he's greeted there. And and so okay, so no private jet.
I know we're gonna fight over this.
No private jet, but let me just quickly pull up the I'm still working here with the controls here. Okay, so I'm going to then pull up his arrival now when he came. Okay. This is I thought this was very funny. So okay, so here he comes. He got off his plane. And this is the honor guard that is going to greet him, and there he is on the Cobus bus. That's the same bus that you and I take when we go to the airport. How is it that he doesn't have a limousine? Okay,
no, they tell it's a VIP. That it's written a VIP bus. So
listen, it's a VIP bus, but I just want to point out the fact that pretty much everybody else, got black cars. Okay, like this. I could not find anybody else who took the shuttle bus the same way that Ruto did. So, I mean, this is the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, and he got black cars. Everybody got black cars.
Yeah.
And
Sassou Nguesso got black cars.
Everybody got black cars, but
except our Ruto.
Ruto has to take the Cobus bus. I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was going on.
I
I
really don't know why. But let me just being a bit snarky here, a bit mean. When I saw him on the bus, it just reminded me the comment he made few months back when he was talking the Africa Plus One summit, when he was saying that, head of states, they take us, they put us on the bus and everything. We're not gonna do that anymore. So
I know. And nobody on African Twitter, nobody on Kenyan Twitter got excited about the fact that Ruto stepped off of a bus.
So me seeing him coming out of the bus, I was like, come on. Seriously, why?
There we go. There's the bus.
Why? Why?
And it's just such a weird thing with the honor guard waiting for him at the bus. And in Beijing,
I don't know why they did that.
Every two-bit official in Beijing has a black Audi A8, and they couldn't find one spare black car to put the president of Kenya in. Now he got, to his credit, you can see here, he got a beautiful, Hongqi black car waiting for him when he got picked up. But man, that. I don't know. I thought that was quite funny there.
Maybe more explanation is going to come out of China later on, but I really don't understand.
I think we were the only ones who noticed this, by the way. We were the only ones who paid any attention to this.
I think this guy's, the way he has been towards China in this first year of his government has been kind of cold, and so probably he was getting what he
No, I don't agree with that.
Sure.
I don't agree with that. When he got elected, one of the first, I think it was the first dignitaries he received were the Chinese
ambassador.
Yes,
the Chinese ambassador,
and he's been, I don't know, he's been quite warm. And I would give him credit in many respects that he's been more effective than almost any other leader, except out here in Vietnam, at really playing the US-China game very well. He was just in Silicon Valley at Google. He's been, really, tight with the Biden administration. And at the same time, you can see he's tight with,
Kenya.
with the Chinese. I mean, so
I
think he's doing a good job in that front. I think, in that way, but I think he deserved a car.
Yeah.
Maybe if you fly business class on Emirates, they give you a car.
Yes.
We're going to ask the Chinese why he was on the bus.
Yeah, we got to find that out. Maybe he flew coach on Emirates, and that's why they don't give him a car.
Come on.
I can't figure this out.
Nah.
So so this is a taste of what the roundtable is going to be like every week. We're just going to do this. We're going to kind of wing it. Sorry for a little bit of the clunkiness with the video and the things like that. We'll figure that out in the but the most important thing, as Giraud said, is the discussion. And that's what we're going to bring you. And again, we're going to have this great team of people we've got in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Today, we talked a lot about Africa, but maybe with Antonia, it's going to be all about Southeast Asia. And with Cobus, he's right now in Europe doing China-Africa climate research. But this is a flavor of it. We'd love to know what you think. Again, we just plead with you to be nice. I just want to let you know that if you get really mean and rude and disrespectful, we're going to delete those comments. Only because we want a really civil discussion. We're all about a civil discussion, and we just don't want to be in the fight. It doesn't help the conversation. I'll be honest with you. Nobody at the China Global South Project wants to be in the fight. We're not wired for this. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to say China good, US bad, US good, China bad, Kenya great, Africa this. No. We just want to bring you a good, informative conversation. So, okay.
And mind you, I want to say something. We don't know everything. We are just a bunch of nerds who like the China Global South discussion, but we don't know everything. So if we've made a mistake on one comment, on one information, feel free to come and say, guys, this piece of information was not correct. This is the correct information. And we usually receive that from people in our newsletter. They say, by the way, the information that you shared yesterday in that newsletter was not correct. This is the correct piece of information. And we are always transparent enough to say, yes, yesterday, the information that we shared was not correct. This is the correct piece of information that a user gave us and shared with us. And this is the way you get the conversation going instead of coming mean, being trolling, you are anti-China, we are not. We are just, if we are pro something, we are pro Global South, basically.
That's it. Yeah. And so, Giraud, I've put down there for everybody to see your website that you manage. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you're doing at Projet Afrique Chine.
So we have the Projet Afrique Chine. This is the French version, the French edition of the China Global South that I'm managing. We have the same coverage of different stories, same and different stories of China in Africa, but in French. We do it on different issues, economy, politics, and everything. And we also have, you also see our Twitter handle Afrique Chine. It's Afrique without a E. It's just Afrique without a E. Afrique
we
Chine.
got-
Yes.
Oh my
Exactly.
Lord. Okay. We
So,
even
yeah,
got our own
it's-
Twitter handle wrong. You
Exactly.
see? Okay,
So
I
you
think
have
I got this one right. There we go.
This
We got
one
to
you
try
got
to
it right. So yeah.
Project.
So you have the Afrique Chine and China Global South where we share the stories and we have the debate and the discussion. We also have our newsletter that comes twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. That's for free. But the one in English, it's paid for. You're gonna have to
It's paid
subscribe
for.
for it. But
And
yes,
we
so
hope you
this
will.
is everything that we really do in the Projet Afrique Chine, and we have our podcast. And for our podcast, since we are here, please, guys, if you do know any French speaking African expert on China, I mean, not only on China, but who's willing to talk, we have a conversation about different issues related to China in Africa in French, please, I'm begging you guys. Leave a note, leave a comment, reach out to us, recommend us, because we really need to have more Francophone voices in that space of China, Africa, because this is what we want to have. So far, when we have that discussion, it's more in English. We want to have much more Francophone voices, African Francophone voices. Mind you, so far, a lot of guests I had, they're coming from Europe, European expert, they speak French, which is good, but it's kind of sad for me because, you know, we need much more African
You don't
Francophone
get real
voices in that
feedback.
debate.
Jenga, that's exactly
Yes.
what you've been finding, you know. I mean,
Exactly.
it's exactly that we elevating African voices sounds great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what everybody says. We need more African voices in the discourse. But in Jenga, you found that it's actually not easy to do.
It's not easy because even like if you speak with some of the international, and I mean in terms of African, like the AU and such organizations, you'll be surprised that if I requested for an expert to speak on something, they will give me somebody who is from Europe. They'll give me somebody from the US, you know, and until I insist I want to speak with an African or, you know, somebody from a certain country, you know, it's
hard.
It's very
It's
hard.
it's really
But
hard.
I have also come to notice that there is some kind of like self-doubting with some of the people because they're like, hey, there's somebody who them, we just want to hear your voice, you know. So there is also that aspect, and I think we have to encourage the Africans to come and speak because they know the story, they have lived through it, so they can tell it better.
Well, we want to hear from you. So again, as Giraud said, if you've got some suggestions for guests, put them in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Not only Africans, but anybody, you know, recommendations on podcasts you'd like to listen to, on people you'd like in Jenga and Giraud to interview in their daily coverage. And Jenga is also building a really cool map that's coming out later this year. That's going to be an interactive map of all the Chinese energy projects in Africa. So that's going to be something that, and we're going to have we'll do a whole roundtable show on that. And then hopefully we'll have Cobus join us next week. But if not, you're going to get the three of us every week. And so that'll be a lot of fun. So thank you for listening to our very first episode of the CGSP Roundtable. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us and hope that you'll continue the conversation with us over on our website at ChinaGlobalSouth.com. And if you'd like to subscribe, we would love to have you part of our reader community. Go to ChinaGlobalSouth.com/subscribe, and we'll give you 30 days free to try out a subscription. It's not expensive at all. It's not, I trust me. And 30 days, try it out. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So for Giraud in Mauritius, for Njenga in Kenya, and for me in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the CGSP Roundtable.